Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and welcome to an unexpected last-minute weekly reset special report. Because yeah, no shit, I'm supposed to be on holiday now, hanging out with my family, maybe even buying some presents. I don't know, the kind of stuff normal people do at this kind of year. But fam, we got some WoW news last night that is so big, so important, there is absolutely no way I couldn't dig the camera out and put the brick wall back up again and talk about it, because honestly, who needs family anyway? When an Iron grows up, he'll never remember that I skipped out on his second ever Christmas to make a video about Dragonflight. He'll be too busy in therapy, and this really is important. But before we get really into it, Internet, I'd like to use some of my magical bronze Dragonflight powers and take you back in time to a couple of episodes ago where I said this. I would not be surprised if we get a 10.1 announcement by the end of the year. And guess what, Internet? I was right. Yes, unlike Nosdormu, who says he can see in the future and yet is actually the most surprised man on Earth when literally anything happens, it turns out I actually can see the future, because yesterday at 5 minutes past 10 a.m. PST, Blizzard dropped a tweet and blue post with not just information about patch 10.1, but every planned World of Warcraft patch in 2023. All 6 of them, in what I'm pretty certain is WoW's first ever public expansion roadmap. I'll let executive producer Holly Longsdale explain the thinking behind this unprecedented move. A WoW expansion is not a single moment in time, but a journey. We know that the merit of an expansion hinges on the sustained quality of its entire arc. Years after its release, Legion is remembered fondly as much for the 11-week content update cadence that served as the framework for its first year as it is for artifact weapons or Khadgar's brilliant dad jokes. Frankly, we need to do better than we have at times in the recent past. Our goal for Dragonflight is that there should always be something right around the corner, with a new update hitting our test realms shortly after the last one is live and in your hands. Now, Holly isn't the first person on the team to express this sentiment, of course. Ian Hazakostis said pretty much exactly the same in a couple of interviews in the wake of Dragonflight's initial announcement, but Ian didn't have the fully laid out detailed graphic to show us. And if you're new to this game, well, hi. Holy shit, welcome, please stay. Seriously, what can we do to make you stay? We'll do it. But also, it's hard for me to express just how, for WoW players, we have never seen anything like this before. Arguably because the devs have never been stupid enough to make promises like this before. And here are the promises. Patch 10.05 at the very beginning of the year, as expected, since the trading post seems all geared up to launch on the 1st of February 2023. But we learn this patch will also include something called Primalist Tomorrow, alongside the long-awaited enabling of white and grey gear for transmog. And don't worry, we're going to come back and look at all these properly. Followed by patch 10.07 in spring, with the return of the Forbidden Reach, human and orc heritage armor, and holiday updates, which, yeah, no one expected that. The big one, patch 10.1, is set to arrive, what is that, between spring and summer? Remember, there are 6 updates here, so we are talking, on average, 1 every 2 months. That comes with a whole new zone, which, may or may not be underground. Who knows? Not us. We don't know. Who even knows? A new raid, and of course all the other good stuff that you'd expect from a new season. In summer comes 10.15 with a new mega dungeon and world events. Patch 10.17 in autumn. No, I will never call it fall. With new story and a holiday refresh. And I'll be honest, I'd be surprised if they've thought too much about this patch yet in any real detail. But then, either still in fall or more likely in winter, but importantly still in 2023, is patch 10.2 with another new zone, another new raid, and all the other stuff that seasons are made of. And don't forget, one of the coolest bits of all about this roadmap, the cheeky post-credit scene style epilogue. More news beyond this roadmap will be shared, and features will evolve based on player feedback. And basically, my life, this is incredible stuff, and risky stuff, especially when you consider that half of the internet was legitimately convinced, don't forget, that Dragonflight was definitely never going to be finished in time for launch, and that Blizz should have definitely delayed release until the new year to avoid it collapsing in on itself. And I can't help but admire the spunk, the chutzpah of putting this out there, because doing so is kind of lose-lose, if they match this plan planned rollout to the letter, they will get no credit, because I should hope so too. And if one thing is different or missing or swapped with something else in a different patch, which you'd imagine will definitely happen to some degree, then Blizz are liars or incompetent or should be sued for lying to their customers. I can guarantee you that if Orc Heritage Armor doesn't make it till 10.1, then someone will unironically suggest a lawsuit on the forums. But assuming that Dragonflight's 2023 looks basically like this, fam, I don't think I have to tell you, we are in for an absolute treat in terms of content rollouts, with an update every 8 weeks or so on average. And granted, that's 2 minor patches for every 1 major, but when you think that it took 8 months for Shadowlands to get its first major update, and then consider that this time next year we will likely be almost done with the 3rd raid of the expansion, it's impossible not to be excited, right? And not just about the fact that the content is rolling, but that we know in advance. This is awesome stuff. Let's take a closer look at those patches really quickly. We've already seen the trading post on the 10.05 PTR, but Primalist Tomorrow is a new one, described as an area by Longsdale with, and I quote, a bit of new world content. So honestly, I wouldn't get too excited about that. I think it's almost certainly going to be like a couple of dailies or world quests that appear in the once again accessible Primalist Tomorrow map, the alternate future version of the Bronze Dragonflight zone in Valdrakken, which we visit in the story campaign. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if those world quests and dailies are straight up reruns of the story quests that we did in that area too the first time round. But new world content just for the hell of it, that's neat. I am not complaining. Especially as, you know, if we can go back to the Primalist Tomorrow for hot daily action, then surely we must find our way back to Azmerloth too at some point, right? 10.07 has a new quest campaign and repeatable content on Exile's Reach, which honestly should feel like a new zone to lots of us, because either you haven't been there at all because you don't like goofy dragon people for some reason, each to their own, or you've been there max a couple of hours as the starting area for your goofy dragon person. And even then, there are probably huge parts of that place that you haven't seen because the leveling quests never even took you there. Holly says that these story quests will directly lead into the story beat of 10.1. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an awesome cinematic or two associated with it, and it's especially satisfying to read, and by its conclusion, it should be obvious what our next destination must be. Because man, if that isn't a drum that we've been banging on this channel since BFA, concluding an arc or beat with each story installment is very important, but in WoW, it's equally important to include a very clear marker of what is coming next. It's really cool that this is a sentiment that Holly clearly stresses a number of times in this post that the team appreciate now too. I'm really hoping that the Orc and Human Heritage Armor quest lines take the opportunity to explore and fill in some gaps in the whole time skip between Shadowlands and now. That would seem like a really good place to have some fun with that. And even the update to recurring holidays is pretty brilliant. And I know you don't agree with me because honestly, who gives a shit about holidays, right? And yes, that's my entire point. One of the cool things about the trading post that I think people are sleeping on a little bit is how the monthly challenges to fill your traveler's log and get your extra 500 tendies are going to be basically very similar every month. There's always going to be X amount of raid bosses to kill, always going to be X amount of auctions to post or whatever. Where players will find the most variety in those monthly challenges will be when they utilize seasonal and micro holidays like Love is in the Air, Hatching of the Hippogriffs, the Balloon Festival, Pirate Day, T-Shirt Day, the 1000 Boat Bash, the Moonkin Festival, the Glowcap Festival, Unguro Madness, Volunteer Guard Day, March of the Tadpoles, and actually 2 of those I just totally made up, but you didn't even notice because you never do any of the micro holidays, do you? Well, actually, I lied about making 2 up because actually all of them were real and you didn't even notice that because, like I say, you never do the micro holidays, do you? It's okay, neither do I. But once the trading post is up, say suddenly like this month, there's 20% of Traveler's Log that you can get just by doing the Kirin Tor Tavern Crawl. Why not? I think micro holidays are going to be a thing a lot more people look at once the trading post is up and running. And so yeah, I'm excited by an update there. Here's how I see it. 10.07 and especially that Exiles Reach content needs to be good, because most players are going to be long finished with their renown progress by then, and whatever is on that Drakthir starting island is going to have to hold until the first major pack of the X-Pack 2 or 3 months later. I think of every update on this list, how much effort and new stuff there is in 10.07 will be the most telling and revealing of all, to be honest. It's kind of silly speculating too much on the other patches because we know so little about them. I suspect Blizzard know very little about them. But the new Mega Dungeon in 10.15 is an obvious standout, and a second major patch before the end of the year with another new zone is a frankly mouth-watering prospect. As is, like, the space that the narrative team will have with what is essentially an extra installment in every major patch cycle to tell their story. WoW's feature dump patch style in recent times has definitely contributed to a stilted nature of the story, big time, and anything that helps smooth out the delivery of quests and narrative beats can only be a good thing, I think. I feel like the story team must be extra specially excited to see how they can utilize that more regular rollout. Oh no, actually, I do have something to say about 10.2, and it's a pretty baseless prediction with zero evidence, really, but it's just something I feel might happen. I've got a feeling 10.2 is going to be the Murozond patch, disconnected from the main story of the expansion in the same way that Ulduar was kind of a standalone, self-contained patch in Wrath of the Lich King. I don't know why, but I've just got this hunch that that's how they're going to deal with Murozond and the Infinites in Dragonflight. Not as a culmination of the main story, but as a little side separate thing, starting and finishing within the 10.2 and 10.25 patch rollout. And yes, you can clip this and all come back and laugh at me later in 2023. That's fair, I think. But I'm just in that kind of mood. You might be able to tell. I am incredibly excited all round for what this roadmap promises. I just like looking at it, as well as the fact that I'm excited by just knowing this far in advance what the plan is, both as a player and a content creator. Look, do you realize you never have to watch a single Taliesin and Evitel or Belilar or anyone else video speculating on when the next patch might be coming ever again for the whole of 2023? Do you realize how awesome that is for you and for me and for Belilar? I'm telling you right now, it's awesome. Being able to enjoy new content when it releases on its own terms without having that underlying anxiety of, yeah, but how long will this have to be fun for before the next update comes along, is a feeling I am very much looking forward to feeling, and that's what this knowledge should give us to an extent. It's ambitious, it's brave, and honestly, like the rest of Dragonflight so far, it just feels like it comes from a team who are confident and happy and off the leash, honestly. For me, there's actually even more about this that I love, because for me, and I can only speak for myself, but this roadmap and what's on it is like the final missing piece that I needed to be confident that Dragonflight is legitimately on the road to being one of the all-time great World of Warcraft expansions. And I don't say that lightly, okay? There's never a full consensus with anything, but I think most people would agree with me that Dragonflight is an absolute banger so far, and in ways that are clearly different from the way other expansions are always bangers right at the very start. Again, just speaking for myself, but I am not exaggerating when I say this opening 3 weeks have been the most fun I've had in the first 3 weeks of any expansion. And granted, I wasn't there for the start of TBC, Wrath, or Mists. Even so, that makes Dragonflight at least top 4 out of 9. Pretty good. Like, I already know that the times I've spent just dicking around, herbing, and fishing in the Azure Span will be times I remember as some of the happiest in my whole time playing WoW. I'm already nostalgic for Azure Span fishing just talking about future patches, and it feels like right now the game is racking up win after win, to the extent that the only real concern I had, the one question that hadn't received any kind of answer, was one of the most important questions of all: patch cadence. And now we have that answer. A genuine banger expansion, so far, sure, but what else have we got to go on, you know? With a solid philosophy and basis to work from, and now a roadmap of a content rollout that, after the lowest ever bar of Shadowlands, sure, can't help but fill you with hope. Like, you can look at that and you can be skeptical that Blizz will meet these goals, and you can doubt that the content will be any good when it arrives, and fair enough, but I don't think anyone looks at this and thinks, that's a bad plan. That is not a good enough patch roll. rollout, you know? And yes, obviously, it could all be total shit. Of course it could. Anything could be. But for me, Blizz have spent the last year and a half pretty much proving that they understand the problems with early Shadowlands and BFA in their words and actions, with Dragonflight being a dazzling culmination of their new approach and freedom so far. And combined with this release schedule, yeah, I feel there is no reason Dragonflight can't be an all-time classic, spoken of in the same terms as Legion and Mists and Wrath. And maybe you're not playing Dragonflight and you think that sounds ridiculous, and I agree, it does. But when I tweeted an even more ridiculous statement just after this news broke, to my genuine surprise, most of the replies agreed with me. Which is absolutely wild. My Twitter following never agrees with me. They enjoy bullying me. And it tells you something about how optimistic this opening patch of the game has made players who were as disillusioned as a player base gets just over a year ago. It's amazing times. And if you think people are overreacting, honestly, you're probably right. But for the last few months, it has been good to be a WoW player in a way that it hasn't for quite a while. And we can take all the time to pick things apart and criticize later, as we should. Right now, I think we can all be allowed to enjoy the moment a little and finish this year on a high. So enjoy it. And here's to many more moments to come. Thanks for joining us today. Especially thank you to our patrons. Have a great new year, and I'll see you soon. From me, Taliesin, and Evitel, and Aniran and Penny too. See you in 2023. And BlizzCon 2023, because that's happening. Just another massive dub at the end there, like it ain't no thing.